Few novels are nearly as influential as epynomous bildungsroman Jane Eyre. In fact, Jane Eyre's ambiguous meaning has created multiple interpretations over time, from gender interpretations at its conception to the discussion of gender stereotypes in the feminist movements in the 1970s. Jane Eyre truly is a mirror of the society of the time, as its different interpretations say a lot about the society's view on gender and women's place in society. It is for this reason that Jane Eyre was first published under a very ambiguous name. After having written the novel between the summers of 1846 and 1847, Charlotte Brontë had the novel published by Smith, Elder and Company using the pen name Currer Bell. It may be because of this that Jane Eyre was an immediate success. The first print run of the book sold out in a mere 3 months. An American version of the book was later published by Harper & Brothers on January 4th of 1848. This was followed by a second English edition, this one with a preface written by Brontë stating that the work was not anti-Christian, as many critics had come to call it. Despite the claims that Jane Eyre was blasphemous, it grew in popularity, with the third edition being published in 1848. In fact, soon Jane Eyre was so popular, the term Jane Eyre fever soon came into use. Despite the increasing popularity of the novel, Brontë kept the pseudonym of Currer Bell on the front page of each edition, mostly to ensure her privacy. However, this had the opposite effect, causing readers to wonder about the author's background. It was only in 1849, at the death of her sister, that Brontë revealed herself to the public as the writer of Jane Eyre.
As already said, Jane Eyre's initial conception was a blast, and many commended its power and originality. George Lewis, poet, philosopher, and famous figure of Victorian England, even acclaimed the book as the exalted region of art. Many praised Brontë for Jane Eyre's character as human but not faultless, and her description of charitable institutions was very close to home for some. This new, realistic style, though, did not please everyone. For starters, many did not believe a woman could have written such a cynical novel, even after the revelation of Bronte's identity. And, as a true reflection of Victorian society, many wondered why a woman would write about the worst parts of human nature. A later review in the Quarterly Review also dismissed the novel as of no Christian grace and branded the book as anti-Christianity. Many claims were also made about the true gender of Jane Eyre, saying that a woman could not have used such masculine words, and given Bronte's poor upbringing, that it could not have been written by her, as she had no knowledge of the middle-class society. Further claims were made about her gender during the late 20th century, even after Bronte's gender was revealed, this time claiming that Bronte's style was too harsh and coarse to be written by a woman, and that it was not suitable for a woman writer. Victorian reviewer Bulwer Lytton even wrote in his reviews that Jane Eyre flatters the vanity of British men, and that it was hence a male fantasy, as young ladies make all the advances and do all the lovemaking, and effectively dismissed it as some kind of Victorian fantasy novel. Many of the ones that protected her work were ruthlessly shot down, except Elizabeth Gaskell, which in the biography The Life of Charlotte Brontë in 1857 revealed that, like Jane Eyre, Brontë had also lost her mother, and that she herself had been a governess. This opened the eyes of many and proved once and for all that Jane Eyre was autobiographical and revealed many aspects of Bronte's life. The debates on the author over, the critics and the masses inquired further about the book's message, digging deep into its unconventional storytelling and Christianity-related messages. This would go on over the 20th century.
Despite the arrival of 2 world wars, many still talked about Jane Eyre and started to praise, once again, Jane Eyre's writing style. This was done particularly by English writer Adeline Virginia Woolf, known professionally as Virginia Woolf, one of the foremost modernists of the 20th century. As a critic, Woolf found Bronte's writing exhilarating and intense, and praised her ability to use imaginary drawn from the natural world as a powerful symbol of the vast, slumbering passions in the human nature. However, she was not pleased with Bronte's way of guiding the reader closely, constantly, and forcibly throughout the book. She compares Brontë unfavorably to Leo Tolstoy, Jane Austen, thinking her to be too narrow in her views compared to other modernist writers. She compares Brontë to be at war, skewing her prose and message through her justified anger. Woolf was not the only 21st century critic to degrade Bronte's work after her death. English literary critic of high esteem F.R. Leavis did not value the work of Charlotte Bronte highly and claimed that the work of Jane Austen and other English novelists, such as Joseph Conrad, was to be held to a higher degree than that of Charlotte Bronte, her sisters, and the novel itself, Jane Eyre, because of the Bronte's novel-specific focused nature. Jane Eyre's use of Gothic was also examined during this time mainly by literary scholar Robert B. Haleman in his essay Charlotte Bronte's New Gothic. In his essay, Haleman praises Jane Eyre's use of the Gothic extra-rational characteristics and the way this is used to explore feelings, passion, and the supernatural occurrences. Haleman also praised Bronte's use of melodrama and surrealism, as he claimed that they helped capture the experiences and feelings of the book. Other critics also focused on Jane Eyre's use of symbols, in particular scholar David Lodge, who in the essay Fire and Air claimed that Bronte's use of the elements was a descent of Romanticism. Where earth and water symbolize discomfort, fire, the most common element in the book, symbolizes ecstasy and happiness.
By the later decades, literature started to become backed by theory and influenced by many factors, mainly by structuralist and post-structuralist schools of criticism, philosophy, and linguistics. As gender-aware perspectives started to gather momentum, so did feminist literary criticism. Adrienne Rich was among the first to represent Jane Eyre as a feminist novel, claiming that Jane Eyre is based on the protagonist overcoming traditional female temptations, romance, and marriage. Rich states that Jane, not having a mother, did better at negotiating her way to maturity, compared to girls with Victorian mother figures which gave them tips on how to trap a man. The feminist meaning behind Jane Eyre was deeply scrutinized in the 1980s, thanks to feminism's need to face the differences between cultures in terms of equality and race. This caused Jane Eyre's interpretation to change, as the lens through the critics saw it, though also changed. Feminists saw in Jane Eyre what many failed to recognize, a protagonist with both male and female tendencies. Jane Eyre is known as a strong, yet domesticated character. Some critics go as far as showing the Red Room as a paradigm of female inner space, and a metaphor for the male-dominant ideologies of the time. Some critics even saw 20th century ideologies in Jane Eyre. For example, Terry Eagleton in Myths of Power, a Marxist study of the Brontes, which claimed that Jane Eyre was based on the fusion of the bourgeois to the other social groups and the protagonist's quest for social mobility, heavily debated by Marx's Das Kapital. British imperialism was considered by critics when discussing Jane Eyre, in particular by Susan Mayer in Colonialism and the Figurative Strategy of Jane Eyre, that claimed that Jane critiques British imperialism mainly by comparing herself as a slave in some instances.
The way that people perceive the novel today is very diverse. Today, people have gotten more interested in understanding the novel's relationship to 19th century social and cultural history. An example of such interest can be seen in 1999, The Brontes and Religion, where Bronte is revealed to be an evangelist and Jane Eyre as a novel is considered to be an accurate description of the cultural and religious climate of the Victorian era.
The novel really helps the reader understand the society of the 19th century, the mindsets and taboos. The roles and expectation of women are the most important theme in the novel. The interesting part about reading the novel today is that we can compare and contrast their rights to the women's rights today.
Today, people suggest that the novel was an attempt to understand how the mind works and about psychology. This point was supported by a 1996 essay, Charlotte Bronte and Victorian Psychology, that claims that Bronte's use of the pen name Currer Bell was particularly telling of the psychology of the time, as if not for her masculine pen name, people would not have praised it the way they had.
In conclusion, Jane Eyre has managed to pass the test of time, its various messages and points still debated today. All in all, Jane Eyre has been a tell sign for the mentality of the people in different points in history. From gender-based criticism, wondering about who wrote the novel and if it was even possible for a woman to write so well, to more scholarly interpretations, linking the book to literary movements of the time like Romanticism, postmodernism, feminism, and even Marxism. Today, Jane Eyre is used as a tool to show the mentality of Victorian England, but it reflects many aspects of life today.